What you're going to see today when I go through the slides is the development of something I never thought I would be sharing with you. I'm as much surprised by this as somebody finding out they're having a child that they weren't expecting. And this child's birth has brought a type of genius and revelation to me and helped me to understand my own journey as an actor, why I became an actor, why being an actor had great benefits in terms of exploring the nature of metaphysics and esotericism, because as an actor you learn a very basic principle. Do not over-identify with the energy. If you're playing a murderer, you're not a murderer. If you're playing a saint, you're not a saint. What you're doing is you are an operating system. You are embodying. You are getting out of the way of the character. If I play Hamlet or another actor plays Hamlet, it won't be one is Hamlet and the other is not. It will be different qualities of Hamlet become knowable because of the different performances. And this is what I would like us to know now as human beings, is it's not about one part, but actually about the code or the qualities within us, the archetypes, the theater of the psyche, that helps us understand that we are composed of these energies, and that as the actor embodies the energy of a character, if we begin to understand this, then we will begin to trust our own involvement in the story and realize that when we allow ourselves, we will be mentored by our own curiosity. And oftentimes when I talk to people, the painters and whatnot, that still paint and haven't given up after all the damage, it's because they simply have to paint. They can't give it up. And to a great degree, the paint won't give them up. I like to say about myself is I don't have ideas, ideas have me. And this really has been the course of my life, because when I was studying at Juilliard, I was studying acting, and I couldn't relate to the character I was playing. He was very violent, and I had to find this violence. And I saw a calligrapher who talked about breath and energy and capturing breath in paint. And I thought, what a wonderful tool for emotional connection. So I didn't start out to be an artist. My dad was a painter. I started out to actually connect with my own energies. I started out using art, as I would say we would as any tool. Let me connect with the very source of my energy. So I started using my hands. I got down on my hands and knees on the paper. Ended up looking a great deal like a Jackson Pollock when I was done. But I had connected with my energy. I knew the truth of the character because it was no longer what I thought. It was what I was feeling. And when I could move into that feeling body, then I was directed, like a boat in the water, as how to play the character. I wasn't thinking about the character. I was moving as the character. And this is why I started to use paint and drawing as a way of journaling. I never thought I was going to be an artist. I never thought, because as I said, my dad was an artist. And if you're the son of an artist, you're intimidated by your dad. Oh, well, he's the painter, I'm not. It's probably why I took acting. Well, at least I don't have to worry about being in competition. But what was great about him, he was very sage-like, and he always said, he said, don't tell me about what you're looking at. Tell me about how you feel about what you're looking at. So I had, from the early get-go, a type of creative environment that was saying, you're the instrument, you're the technology, you're the tool of inquiry. You don't have to sit and wait for it to happen. Step into the question, embody the question. And as we step into today's story of the feminine divine and the art of creation, the painted revelations of wonder and meaning, and I say the art and visual Sophia of Leigh J McCloskey, why I wanted to talk about painted revelations of wonder and meaning is that in the same way of getting out of the way, like if you're playing music or dancing, and you're moved by the music, you're moved by the dance, you feel it in your body, and you feel the revelation in your body. You know because you know, not because it's being explained to you, but suddenly you feel, oh, this is far more than myself. This feels very eternal. This feels very connected to an imprint that is well beyond myself, but really is that which is mine as well. And this is why I say to all of us now, we have to move beyond personal psychology. We have human psychology we experience personally. We are not incomplete. We are not unworthy. We have stepped into, and this is why you'll see behind me my work on the tarot and the wheel of the tarot. These are my black and white drawings that I glued down, the cards, to give us a sense that one of the changes in our conversation, and when we think about the feminine divine, what we are beginning to go from is a line to a circle. Because if we look at the journey we have come out of, the age of the Father, this is the journey of I think, therefore I am. If I think I'm not you. Now, the knowledge of the mother, of the ancestors, is the knowledge of I love, therefore I am. Because when we love, we realize we are one another. We also realize we have responsibility to one another. But we were here developing the ego, meaning how do you separate this sense that I am uniquely different from you? Jung got at this as the process of individuation. In ancient times, we saw one another in one another's eyes. And so therefore, if I was successful because I shone in your eyes, not because of how I looked at myself in a mirror, but I knew I was beautiful because I was beautiful to you. Do you see that sense of communion? And that started to teach me about theater and ensemble, is that in ensemble, we come together recognizing one another's excellence and saying, let's come together, and together we'll amplify each other. We'll find places we cannot get to alone, but together we will open doorways of imagination and possibility that will reveal to all of us that we really are an ensemble group. We really are meant to stand together. I feel like the actors in the world are standing with their backs turned to one another. And all we're trying to do is say, turn around. The play's not with what you have and holding on to what you think you are. It's turning back into this shared conversation. And this is why the creative and imaginative is where we will see the healing in the planet. Because I know now that it is the stories we tell that heal us or that deprive us of healing. And that's why our interest in the feminine divine, you would wish that this would be more fascinating to more people. But I was talking, saying that I'm realizing that if we think about the journey of a plant, the blossoming of a plant, it's not the many that forces the blossom. It's enough that finally surrender to a different proposition, that say, I like this story better, that influences the whole of nature. And that's why I say we're trying to move away from being against something or how many are attending, but realize that we're attending. And when people say to you, well, who cares? Stop them and say, I care. That's enough for me. I don't need this conversation to convince my neighbor. And that's why all of my work takes us to the domestic realm, because my work has come from home. I didn't try to be an artist in the outer world. I realized that this culture, you become essentially a particular profession. And I understood that. I didn't take it personally. I said, that's just the way it is. But that doesn't stop me from gathering amongst those that care about these things and really cultivating a question about, well, what's the purpose and nature of art? Not in relation to the art world, but our use of it. What's the point? Why do we need these tools? Why do we need to remind ourselves that we're capable of finding alternatives by entering into the difficulty that's upon us? And that's where I feel this story of Sophia is saying that visual Sophia, meaning that the love of wisdom, the love of knowing, is going to be revealed in this to us through the process of a picture being worth 1,000 words. And that's why we enter first with the sense that Joseph Campbell gave us. And he said, the artists of every generation must reinvigorate the myths. And I say to all of us, we've got to get over artists are those who paint. Artists have to do with an approach to living. It's the questions we ask or don't ask that makes us artists. The alchemists called themselves artists because they tried to tell us that it is an art, meaning that art comes from spontaneous creation, not the proving of a theory, not the distillation of something you already know and therefore need to defend with intellectual prowess, but actually it's the opposite. It's when we step into the mystery of not knowing and we allow the process to nurture us, to guide us, and to mentor us. And this is why the feminine, and this is very important for the talk, the feminine is the first principle. The feminine is the life principle. We have grown up in a time where math is considered the first principle. Math is the second principle, and this is a philosophical problem. And this is what happened with the Renaissance and our dear friend Bacon, who in his book Novum Organum says no more teleology, in other words, no more synthesis. Everything's going to be studied separately. And this is what happened to our psyches. We had a synthesizing element when we understood the first principle was life. When it became math, we were never going to be there We were separated. And this was a wonderful story between a man named Robert Fludd, the last great, really Hermetic philosopher, and Johannes Kepler, the astronomer, who wrote 3 Laws of Planetary Motion. And they had a debate going because Fludd said, you know what? If you measure everything and create math for it, people will think they're always at a distance from the stars. They won't realize the stars exist within themselves. And this break with how we once saw ourselves, this is why Leonardo's Vitruvian Man, which you'll see again as woman, but in this it's saying that we were measuring all things. And the macrocosm, microcosm of that great identity was saying we are the universe in miniature. We know because and this is why all of the Renaissance frontispieces, you see all these spokes, all these different, it says the human psyche is not one question. It's not one discipline. These are all tools. And we, as we understand this, then say, I can utilize all these tools and enter into not just one territory, but the territory of being human. And that's why I'm trying to resuscitate a sense of this Renaissance ideal that we are the tool of inquiry. Because what's our modern parlance for macrocosm, microcosm? Hologram, holographic, fractal. So it's in our story. We just don't know how to apply it to our psychology. And that's where Joseph Campbell, as I said, says to the artist, meaning that those that can understand that your creativity allows you to move beyond the agreement field of the existing time, and because you're looking at it mythically, you're not simply trying to fix it. You're trying to see the pattern that isn't just in your time, but really is the pattern across all time. It helps you to understand the difference between what's actual, meaning the repetition of bad ideas, and what's real, meaning what are you bringing to the conversation. And that's why in the wheel here that we see here as well, we'll talk about the Mysterium Magnum Grail. And this is known as the Arcanum Arcanorum, or the secret of secrets. And I really want us to think about this sense of setting the wheel in motion, and that we, across the ages, have been journeying through all of these different doors of possibility until we finally come full circle and stand in the center of the wheel, realizing we are the outcome of this great journey. And this is where we see the High Priestess. This is my work on the Tarot, which I have found to be the most fundamentally important journey for me in terms of preparing the ground for everything that came after it, because I spent 17 years working on the Tarot Arcana. And that's really a sign that I wasn't rushing to tell you something I really didn't know but thought you should. It was that saying, this will not be born until it's ready to be born. And I thought it's like a 17-year-old child. It took a long time before it left the house. But what it did was it created this story of really deep, and this is very important for a woman, because we're going to make sense of the feminine divine. We have to move deeper than the cultural and social model of the feminine, really back into its mythic and what we see, even energetic, structural elements of the deep feminine, because she is going to reveal herself as the mystery of mysteries, the high priestess who says, I am the mystery of mysteries, I am prima materia, dark matter, mater, mother. I am she who can never be known or unveiled. I am the source of all being. Sounds like a pretty profound mystery to me. And this is why it's often a mystery that people are terrified to step into. But the great thing about her is we realize we step into it whether we will or whether we won't. And here we see, she says, I am the union and the dissolution. I am the abiding and I am the dissolving. I am the one below and they come up to me. I am the judgment and the acquittal. I am sinless and the root of sin derives from me. So this is also this dark matter that emerges as ultimately we'll see the story of light matter, or the knowledge of the great mother Sophia, the empress, and the mother of light. Do you see we have the mother, the dark mother, dark matter, dark matter, dark mother, light matter, light matter, light mother. And she says, and this is quoting Whitman, there is no object so soft, but it makes a hub for the wheeled universe. I am matter, mater, mother, the weave of all worlds. I am the mother of the sun, the mother of light. All worlds awaken through me. All are woven of me, and I am the first principle, life, creation. Math comes from creation. That's what these Mandalas are going to show us because they come from a painting or creation and will then reveal their geometries. And this is my strength archetype. And as we can see, she is poised amidst natural forces that could devour her instantaneously, but she says, I am fearless serenity, the mighty heart and alchemy of creation. And for all of this, as this great energy, this difficulty swirls around all of us, I think it's really to use imagery like this sense of find that center where it is aligning with the centrality, this sense of wonder again, that allows us to mediate, in a way, the chaos and understand its alchemy. Emerson said it wonderfully. He said that every age is the dark alchemy out of which we must draw our heroic tendencies. Isn't that beautiful? So meaning that it's up to us not to overly believe, but to understand what our true strength is. And this is also the true strength of the feminine divine. And this is what she's trying to tell us as well, because we are forgetting and have oversimplified woman. And woman has essentially, is retelling these stories to herself and of herself, and they're being told to and through me. And it makes me remarkably aware of how, when you shut out half of the conversation, when you shut the relationship off, it's like dividing the hemispheres in the brain. And you really have just conflict without any resolution. And here we see justice as a great dancer on the earth, holding the strings of eternity, saying it is not a battle, it is learning discernment that restores the musicality of your perception. Meaning true justice is not either or, not right or wrong, but like a musical phrase. How does it follow? How does it come together? Think like a dancer. We've been taught to think of everything sort of stopped. And she says, I am the blossoming heart and the open eyes of the eternal. I am the gate between worlds. Life is my art form. That's my favorite thing to remind people these days. You are a work of art. And guess what? That's the only thing that explains the pain. I really thought, I said, why has this species, I mean, the more you love history, the more you go, oh, that must have hurt. Oh my God, oh, that was dreadful. Oh, we did that. How could we have done that? Oh my God, we're still doing that. You know, I mean, and that's why I really understood. If you were talking to the marble as Michelangelo was whacking away with his chisel, I'm sure the marble would go, he keeps telling me he's freeing something that's in me, but it hurts. And this is where I feel we're at. It's saying that, yeah, the drawing out of the stone, our living beauty, the capacity to hold both our relationship in this world and once again to restore a sense of wonder about this world, is really reminding us that if we understand the pain as art rather than meaninglessness, it won't be just pain. It'll be that which actually prompted our transformation. And this is, you know, and to me, it's how we frame things that ultimately allows us to deal with them or to be undone by them. And the star, again, this quality of he turns not back who is bound to a star, our friend Leonardo. You know, keep going, keep asking questions, keep being curious, and don't let anybody ever tell you no, no, no. Just say yes, yes, yes. And she says, so you see, I am aspiration. I bridge worlds within worlds, bringing all of these qualities together, opening the seed of infinite possibility. We plant through aspiration our sense of things. But we have to deal also with the qualities of the unconscious, of the moon. And it's very interesting. This moon archetype of mine, I feel she taught me so much, because this is usually shown as a crayfish, a dog, and a castle off in the distance. And I said, that's an example of 19th century male patriarchy, which is going, I don't really understand anything other than the virgin. And she is actually such a key. And in my book, it's a very important point, because it's about creating the possibility, and this is where we're at as well as a species, which is that the first birth is given. This is the birth into time. The second birth we choose, which is turning inward. But the third birth is when, from having turned inward, we re-enter the world, bringing back what we know, essentially like the hero's journey. And this is why she says, you first must journey through the darkness of your own energies. You must journey through that which you cannot know except by being submerged in it. Think about your life. You're submerged in these things. You don't have a choice. And you think, what is this about? I'm a good person. It's saying that the primordial depths that you are woven of are of such enormous energy that they teach you, like a swimmer, having to learn how to swim currents. This is why the model of intellect is the mind can figure it out. But really, if you think about this other energy of our body, it's saying, no, no, no. What comes over you are feelings. What comes over you is not a theory. What comes over you is not a concept. It's an actual environment of experience. So to know how to navigate these things, you must journey through this ancient being. And this is the other thing of the sacred divine. She says, I remind you, you are not born into time. You're born into creation. You are ancient. And therefore, this body you think of as your own is actually a technology developed across the ages to carry more and more of its own implication. And this is what the archetypes allow us to understand. You see this map of the psyche that says, if you think you're making this up and just figuring it out, you're going to go crazy. There's too much. But when you can, and this was actually in the Renaissance called the theater of memory, and it was very important. It said, if you look at the chaos, it's just going to be chaos. And so what we would do is create, like with the statue of Mars, the statue of Venus, everything having to do with love, we would start to take a mental note and use that as a foundational, almost tuning fork, Venus. So whenever I think of Venus, everything having to do with love, fertility, will actually then not be just a book I've read, but actually a quality of thinking that becomes essentially like a tuning fork connected to this symbol. And this is what our hieroglyphic knowing was about. And this is why this is an ancient technology, but it's reasserting itself because it's saying, once you understand that this is really like a piano, and that we all have these keys, these operating systems, these characters within us, then we will say it's not choosing which one or another, but beginning to understand, how do I create a relationship where this inner chaos can actually make some friends with itself? So I don't know about you, when people would tell me, be yourself, I always thought, well, which one? You know, who's your favorite artist? What day? What's your favorite kind of music? I don't know. What are we listening to now? I mean, it's like, it's that sense that we really are so dynamic, and we've been and I really feel it's like we took this where we stood here on this story of the let me see if I can do this, not turn it into a comedy routine, but stood in the center of the wheel. Do you see how I'm standing? And also almost feel like a magic carpet. I'm riding this. But think about being focused this way, these two eyes. I'm getting somewhere. So we're only dealing with a very narrow range of our own psyche. And what this is trying to say is actually, no, no, no. What we want to do is turn around full circle. And this is also the knowledge of the divine feminine, because she says, I love all my children. I don't think any are good for brutalizing. Therefore, I say, how do you include all of the stories? Not the ones you agree with or don't agree with, but how do you include a picture of humanity that says, I am all of this? Not some of it, not just what I like and don't like. I am all of it. Do you see, then we're willing to turn into other qualities. And this is what I really admire about really great actors. When I remember Meryl Streep, when she had her child lost, stolen by a hyena or whatever. And what she had to go through as a mother to play that part, I realized was because she was so willing to go here. Because right here you'd say, I'd never even go there. I wouldn't even think about that. But she had to go, you know? And this is what, but I think that this is a safety valve. This is why theater came from the mysteries. It was saying it gives us tools to explore these energies without taking them personally. Because we're taught, again, because it's profitable, I hate to say it, to keep us in a limited psychological box. You are as much as you own, you are as much as you make, you are what you wear, you are your age, you are. But that's not real, that's actual. And that's what's actually been happening for ages. Which is why as we stand in our reality now, we realize that it will actually be this circular nature that says, I'm not getting somewhere. That's the straight line. I'm going from here to there. But maybe if I'm actually turning, and this is the joke here. I mean, we really think we're going somewhere, but life keeps going. I don't know. I just lost. Oh no, I'm going somewhere. That's right. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I know I am. And hopefully that interface this way will interface with what you're after, because you could be in this direction while it's going by. And this is one of the reasons why our tooling, our story is, the moon says, I am obsession and madness. I am illumination. I am the sensual truth of energy. I am the dark mistress of death. I am the giver of life. None pass beyond time's illusions except through me. And that's key. If we do not pass through the moon, we can never awaken the sun. The sun is the true vitality of life essence, and that cannot be known except from within. Its radiance would blind us from without. And that's why when people claim to solar wisdom who have not passed through the journey of the body and are not speaking the truth of the sensual and do not love, speak in platitudes. And if you pinch them hard, they fall apart quite quickly because it's all outside. It's like an ectodermic skeletal system. And that's why this is saying that this is where we start to take back, I am an ancient being, and although I journey through all of these qualities, I realize that they are fashioning me, they are cultivating me, and they are teaching me how to navigate my ancient truth. And this is the last of the archetypes that I'm going to share, but this is my world archetype. And this is dated 9/11, 1986. One of the reasons I want to share, again, what's been happening with the artwork is because I haven't planned any of this, but I've been fascinated that so many things mythically have paralleled it. And I think it's because I have gotten out of the way. Like stones have come to me, a bird came into my, a heron came into my house. And I really think what happened, it was because those qualities of consciousness go, he'll tell the story. He's not going to say, oh, a big dumb bird in my house, go have a taco. He's going to actually have, he's going to make up a story about it. And the same thing, these rocks came to me, these extraordinary stones, and I realized there's the story of creation in these stones. And that's when I started to understand rapport. If we don't ask, if we don't go, hey, I'm interested in you, do we really think it's going to be interested in us? It's all down to relationship at this point. If we stand going, nothing's happening. Where are you? I insist you come. It's like, not anymore. Those days are over, honey. You got to become worthy of me. This is what we have, and this is why with men and women, as I say, women have to stand in front of the mirror. You've lost so much, in a sense, through this sacrifice. You've got to stand in front of the mirror and say, I am worthy, until that resonates as a root system going down to your ancient, this archetypal level of yourself. And men need to stand in front of a mirror and begin to say, may I become worthy. This is why the Grail Nights were all about becoming worthy of that which one seeks. If one gains without becoming worthy, one becomes a tyrant. That's just the nature of the psyche. It's called the unconscious emperor. And this is very important because this story, she says, you see the falling away of the Twin Towers. And I open the inner eye of wisdom, overturning the illusion of death. The twin pillars of secular and religious hegemony fall away, revealing the sacred path of the great human tree and the eternal mother alive and birthing all worlds simultaneously. And that's what we see here between this pillar and this pillar. We see her emerging. Do you see? And this started to tell me a story that as the binary falls away, the secular and religious, the two brothers, the false erections, the twin towers, I love the symbolism because they're mirroring each other. They're the biggest erections on the block. It's secular and religious, meaning I have more money than you do, be obedient. I have God and you don't. Be obedient. This becomes the two fish of the Piscean age. The two brothers that jealously, the one of otherworldly kingship and the one of worldly kingship, both between this friction. Do you see? But both saying, be obedient, stay asleep. That falls away. And she reappears. Now notice how she's reappearing with the serpentine energy and the root system. And the sword is not in play, but she's saying, you see, you emerge out of all worlds simultaneously. And when you return home, when you awaken now, you will realize that as the outcome of all of these worlds, you no longer need to fear death. That's an illusion. You need to open this eye that was soft when you were born and open, a sense of wonder. And I liken it this way, is that we step up into this world and our sense of wonder moves into these two eyes. Do you see a sense of duality, a sense of contrast? Very important, because we're creating an operating system. Do you see red when I see red? Does this mean this to me and it means this to you as well? We say, yes, these two eyes hold that knowledge, the knowledge of form and agreement. But this then, as these eyes stabilize, and this is where we're at now, it's saying we must consciously begin to open once again this eye, a sense of wonder, because this eye never sees directly. But think about a sense of wonder. You're seeing war through these eyes, and this is shut down. What do you see? What side will I be on? Who am I against? Who's the bad guy? But when this opens, that realization, no, wait a minute, I'm part of humanity. And this has been going on forever, so it's not who am I for, who am I against, why are we still at war? You see, and this then starts to say, and this is a new right angle. Very important. You see this right angle between the eyes and this? It's saying that as we begin to own this, then, and this is why in my Fool archetype, you'll see this wheel around its midsection. Because it's saying, do you see like a gyroscope? We're going to now have structure, meaning these eyes will not drive us mad. And when you see my artwork, at the end of the day, I will say, and I haven't gone crazy doing all of this. And it's very important for the story, because if I had, it would say, well, you're still over-identifying with the imaginative energies. You're being swept away by them, and you can't come back. But what it tells me now is actually the form, our bodies, our minds, can navigate with great sanity the reality, I say that in quotes at the place, but it once again can understand that it's deeper technology, and what infuses it is its wonder, because that's timeless energy. Meaning that when we look at the ancestors, they say, why do you think you're here? We kept within the rottenness of our time, the difficulty of our ages, the tragedy of our lives, the hope that you would come. You'd finally arrive here. And you'd say, we might not be many, but you know what? Together we can construct a story that allows us to say yes rather than yikes. You know, that allows us to say, I like being human. There's no mistake in being human. It's a noble and a heroic enterprise. And that's where now, as we move into the wisdom of Sophia, and she tells us, you are not born into time, you are born into creation. You are whole, holy, holographic. You wear the living weave of the ancestors. And we enter into our multidimensional origins and the artistry of creation. And I wanted to put this in because this has so fascinated me. Tor, the ancient ones. Because it actually adds another chapter, an earlier chapter, to why we're here in this strange predicament. And it's this elongated head, it's this figure, that as I was working in my studio, this is on the floor of my studio, this is in the Hieroglyph of the Human Soul. So this is actually looking down, and she started to tell me a remarkable story. She said, you don't come from nothing, you come from vast knowing, and you came here in order to forget. We once had very large heads, she said, meaning that we could be interconnected with the matrix, so to speak. But it was not a creative mind, it was an elegant mind, meaning you could see the implication of all things. You could see the vastness of all things. But we were interested in exploring the nature of intimacy. What if we could forget? What if we could be intimate? What if we could look at our son or our daughter and realize that I don't know if we're going to be here tomorrow, and how that would create a sense of, without that certainty that I know, how precious it makes this moment. And that's very important to us, because if we don't have this crippled sense that we came here just by a mistake, but start to say, maybe we came here heroically. And that's what I get from my work. It says we came here heroically because we were the ones that said, yeah, let me give up that all-knowing. That's not a commonly heard phrase amongst the all-knowing. But this species did. And it was because we are artists of consciousness, meaning ours is to explore the nature of creation through embodying into creation, taking on its difficulties. It's easy to be a god sitting on the outside of a planet dictating what would work for the world. And I don't know about you. I do not want an alien or another person showing up with another book telling me to be obedient. I haven't figured it out. Here, this is the new manual. I want us to come together and say, no, you know what? We're the technology. We're millions of years old. As a matter of fact, she said we've been working on this for about 18 million years. And it's like the coming together of a ship in the night, meaning that, and it's about the solstice the Maya talk about, is on the solstice is when we stand erect. We stand in alignment with these ancient ages. And through alignment, they begin to seep into us through osmosis, meaning they begin to inspire us. But because these energies are so creative and loving, they never overwhelm nor wish for anyone to feel less because of their presence. What they seek is relationship and partnership, meaning, can I flow through you? If you allow me to flow through you and you realize that who you think you are is far more than you thought, let love expand who and what you... And we know this when we fall in love. We know what that feeling is. We just don't realize it's technology in us, meaning that we know and we can navigate ourselves by what we are willing to love, rather than what we are solely willing to fear. And this is why out of these ancient depths, this sense that we came here to this world from all over, meaning that we came from ancient stars. And this is what our early mythologies tell us, that we came from ancient stars. And think of this question, choosing a planet that could uphold the illusion of separateness, meaning that the closer you are to the main signal, the more impossible it is to believe that you're not connected, that you're not one. It's almost like putting way out in the boondocks. So by the time you get out here, you can really believe that there is no connection. But why would you do that? You would do that because you were actually creating an experiment in creation that was saying, maybe like nitroglycerin, we should put it pretty far out. But also like nitroglycerin, I think we have something incredibly powerful here, incredibly potent. And if we think of nitroglycerin, this is why we're trying not to blow ourselves up. Do you know, in a sense? But it's the anger of our ideas that is the most dangerous. Do you know, because that blows us up internally. And well, I don't need to tell you. And so this was the story. We came from vastness to explore intimacy. We awaken the human form divine. Humankind is an art form of creation, and you are a work of art. And I like that story better. And in this story, and also as I was working, this became a question over and over again. How did this happen? What happened to the goddess? When you look at history and you see the mother goddess and you see the devotion to and then there's just this break. You know, you can look at a 400 or 500 year span, but to the point where it's saying, mother, I didn't have a mother. I don't think I have a father. I'm the only one. And this is the ego. In a sense, when you hear, I am the one God, the only God, there are other gods before me, all are false, all are demons. What we're hearing is actually the developing ego. I don't remember who I am, why I'm here, what the point is. I don't know who my parents were. I'm an orphan. So maybe I need to figure out an MO that allows me to feel empowered. I'm God. I know, ladies, all the havoc of the male psyche. But this story of what happened to the goddess brings us back to dark matter, mother, the mystery of mysteries, the moon, and the high priestess, because we're going to go down into this root matter to really understand who we are, and the story of the sacrifice of the goddess, of Lilith. Lilith was in mythic narrative, she was the first wife of Adam. And the story goes that she would not lie under Adam. She would not be subordinate to Adam. And she was then shunned, and Eve, steps in, the second wife. I love you, Eve, I'm saying that. But the sense of Lilith, though, what it's actually telling us, and it's very important historically, is this is actually, Lilith is the end of the age of the goddess. She is what is sacrificed. It was turned into a parable about a succubus and this and that. In the same way the early Christians were accused of eating babies, so is she. It seems like whenever you get the wrong end of the stick from the press, it's a bad thing. And this is really what Lilith proved to me, was she said, no, you misunderstand. The goddess turned herself inward, and there's a reason for that. And it's a beautiful reason, because she says, I'm the veiled one, I'm the hidden goddess in woman. And I dissolve the illusion of the illusion. I am your ancient energies, your erotic knowing, and your sensual truth. And here, she's painted on the back of a painting of mine. I never expected, as I said, to deal with Lilith, nor did I have that much, in a sense, intercourse with that character archetypal. I knew about her. So I was stunned when she appeared, and she appeared on the back of a painting. As you can see, the stretcher bars. She's actually painted behind a painting. So she hid herself, because when we turn to the front of the painting, she hides herself behind the blossom. And this story of the blossom will be repeated in these mandalas, but it will also be repeated in the story that we came here to blossom. And the story of Adam and Eve, of our parents, was that to bring forth unique creation, intimacy, we had to forget who we were. And Lilith, the goddess, said, I can't forget who I am. I am sensual, erotic, ancient knowing. I am completely connected. And therefore, I cannot create the illusion of separateness. Therefore, I, with my ancient power, and think about this in woman, because she's going to be betrayed by her beloved when he turns toward the mirror of self-reflection, and I think, therefore I am, when he turns away from love and turns toward authority, which we see in history. And that's why she says, why Lilith says, do you see, therefore I turned myself inward in woman. I became the lioness that lives at the heart of every woman. I survived the betrayal of my beloved. Therefore, my ancient energy and power within you turned inward and has hidden until now. And this is also, in a sense, the relationship to power in the feminine psyche, about what is this? What is true power? And she's saying, I'm returning the knowledge of true power because I dissolved the illusion of illusion. And when we get to Eve, you'll see this remarkable partnership. So she hid behind our energies so that we could blossom. And here we will see this figure at the bottom of the blossom, this ancient infant. And this started to tell me the story. As you can see, it's looking down in this open eye, this sense of wonder, looking into the possibility of birth. And I started to feel that it's thinking realities onto the tips of its fingers. So it can't go, hey, ha! It's actually, with a sense of wonder, allowing things to grow in their own possibility. But this life principle will take us into the deep feminine creation and life. And of course, this is the Empress, as I said, who is the knowledge of Sophia, the mother, or I love, therefore I am. And this is Sophia emerging in the hieroglyph of the human soul. And as you can see, I've painted her on the cabinet. I didn't do that with intentionality, but I do love William Blake saying that if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. And the Blakean in me loves the fact that the mind of Sophia, when we open the cabinet doors, domestic cabinet doors, actually reveal the story. If everything were cleansed, it would appear as infinite. And she's going to tell us the story of this infinite journey. And this, of course, is her crown, where we see this story within the mouth of the serpent, the knowledge of the mother and the knowledge of the father. We can also look at this revelation as the two qualities, the two hemispheres. Because we've got to think, as Jung said, these are intrapsychic principles, male, female. They're not just, are you a girl or are you a boy, but we carry these stories within us. And that's why the masculine, the story of the journey through time and condition. And here on the left, we see the knowledge of the mother. And she told me a remarkable story. She said, you must remember, you don't travel universes with machines. You travel universes through wombs. If it takes 100 million years to get to the nearest star, your math is wrong. There is no there. You are a hologram. And in a hologram, to think there's somewhere to get to is to misunderstand the nature of a hologram. And that's why the sense is, what we're to do now is to create analogy points of alignment. And that's what this is. And why this is very important also is that we see this relationship of the two qualities of mind, this great adventure. And here's Sophia, as you can see, she's emerging up out of the, she's actually painted, her body is painted on the linoleum floor of my studio. And if there's never a more mythic signature than that, you could say the myth is when we start to pay attention to what we have reduced to being just so ordinary we don't need to pay any attention to it anymore. I thought, here's this linoleum that, it was luckily ugly enough, even by painting it, you couldn't make it look worse. But she appears, she comes up, her alchemy, she says, you see my alchemy, I transform linoleum into your ancient knowing. And this story then, she's emerging, and this is where we see the figure two. Do you see in the painting above her? This is where we actually see the painting we were just looking at. So Lilith is literally on the other side of the painting. She's literally hidden. And I just feel there's a key to the layering, because they say women are complicated. What I've discovered, that's a euphemistic phrase. How about really complex? You know, it's sort of like walking in with a woman into the hieroglyph and saying, you're this and this and this and this and this. So when your husband looks at you and goes, can't you just be this? Just say, no. And this shows, but she's going to show us this story in her belly, you can see. And this is very important for the knowledge of the mother, the knowledge of the feminine divine. She says, look at my belly. You see the face of the infant, the face of the child. And the reason is I remind you that to be human is to be as a child. You don't remember who you are. You don't remember why you're here. But if you start to create a condition of why that might be important to think about, then you'll realize, as she says, you see here, notice in the imagination of the child is this alchemical lembic, the waters of mind and imagination. And we see the blue above. And what's interesting here is that is actually, when we go back to Sophia, we see it in her crown, the drop of blue. And her story is my gift are the waters of infinite generation. Meaning whatever you think about will become your truth. So therefore, across the ages, you've been journeying, and this is what the alchemical chalice here is. Do you see, the grail here starts to show, the grail is the chalice, the grail is also the body. But in this, it's showing us the mystery of the grail is the knowledge of the waters of eternity or of infinite generation that have fallen into our creative mind as a species that does not know. But the reason it has developed us is to finally, once again, as you see this, because this is coming out of this eye, our sense of beauty and wonder will allow us to connect, as we'll see here, up into the seed in the heart that blossoms. She also shows us another remarkable story about why we always see Isis and Mary on the lunar crescent. Why is she always on the moon? And the story is, and I love this, she says that I remind you, you're not born into time, you're born into creation, you're ancient. And therefore your sensual ancient body knows these things. And if you trust this ancient sensual knowing, you will be informed by them. But if you do not trust your sensual knowing, if you do not trust your ancientness, you will begin to fear these things. Then you will build religions that say that God is elsewhere, and you will write books that say that life is about drowning. Our culture. And that's the point, because she's saying, but the truth is, the ark is, and this is where you can see in the pyramids, why they were buried around the. It's very important because it says that what we think of as stationary is actually we're a fluid being. We're blood and water. So we're always in a fluid state. And to navigate our inner self is what? To create an ark, a navigating capacity to navigate our ancient depths and not be overwhelmed by them. And this is very important because she says, when this is known, you begin to blossom. And this is where we will see the story of the alchemical mother, meaning she is telling us here with this figure 8, do you see? You are giving birth to her, the knowledge of the great mother, in relationship, and this is a wonderful thing, it's like the two wings of a butterfly. It's what we think of as divinity saying, you know what, I develop depending upon the adventure you're willing to take in time. And those are the characters in the arcs entering into worlds. And that's why, when we understand that what we think of as the spirit or other worlds are not fixed, that everything grows within the ratio of the imagination that's capable of asking the question that's more and more inclusive. I call this oxygenation, meaning it's not something. It's simply when we breathe more deeply, because when we oxygenate, think about it, we're not afraid. We can think more clearly. More comes to us. And that's what she's saying. And so you understand this journey you are on, and from your ancient depths, then the knowledge of God the Mother, this is splendor. And she's in relationship, interestingly enough, physically to God the Father of Michelangelo's on the ceiling. And I thought, isn't that interesting that she appears on the linoleum within domestic space, showing the story that we emerge out of these depths. God the Father appears within institutional space at a height that we cannot touch, we cannot reach. So in a way, you could say that that sense of lack pulled out of ourselves a lot of our libraries, a lot of our questions. But now we return what? To this, to intimacy. And she says, when you look down, I'll show you this story of the ark. And you have been on this great journey, because as we see, this is what's in front of her. And this was the story she gave me. She said, I remind you that you are an ancient species and you came here, and that the great genius you have now, and don't take this lightly, is you have an independent ego, meaning no matter how much affects it, you will not be dissolved. And in ancient times, in animism, you must understand that when you were involved in a great idea, you were swept away by it. And this is where our religions come from, because we literally were swept away. So everything was connected. We had to come up with lead boots, basically. How do we make the experience here and now? How do we not wait for it to be in the future? And this is why when we look at our traditions now, most of us are promised things in the future. And what we must look for is, no, what pulls the play now? The theater is here. It's not down the road. And if it is, that's the world we cultivate, one of waiting. I'm not it. I'm not meant to be there. It was done by somebody else and for somebody else. And that's why many of our questions, she says, as we encounter, as we see this oceanic consciousness re-emerging, saying you have grown out of these very oceanic qualities yourself, you are still fluid, and in this journey now I can show you the journey of Eve, the mother of generation, and the becoming of woman. Because as Lilith turns herself inward, Eve is brought forward. And what this forbidden fruit, the delicious knowledge of Eve, I talked about the Vitruvian Man of Leonardo, which is my son archetype, you can see as well. But what she brings, and this is all about embrace, she says, I embrace the right, I embrace the left, they're all my children. There are no evil atoms. If you don't like the stories you tell better stories. Begin with the story you tell yourself about yourself. Who do you think you are? And that's where we have, do you see, from this measuring of all things to the inclusion of all things. Think of this as life. That life cannot exist unless it includes all aspects of itself. We cannot divide life against itself or it dies. And this is what those of the first principle perceive. Those of the second principle think, no, you can work it out mathematically. Mistake. And this is my third book, Adam Reborn, Eve Restored, a romance in two parts, but this is the emergence of Eve. And that was the story she told me as she emerged. And what is extraordinary about her, as you can see, she's painted on a lamp on a light pillar. And she actually, in her body, will show us the chalice, the grail, the rising and falling of the blood. And this is very important for the divine feminine. This is why the grail was a heresy to the church. It said that love is the grail. When love between man and woman opens, then life is seen as the first principle, not the elsewhere, not fear of death, but love of life. Therefore, there is no intermediary. There is no need of a priest, because you have opened the gates of the eternal together. Very dangerous stuff. But this is what she's saying, is when this is known, the womb opens, when male and female come together within us. And then it becomes about life, and there's no hierarchy in the womb. All is essential for life. A toe cell and an eye cell are each equal, because they will each support life. And life is the thing. Think of the generosity in that. You know, the generosity of, this isn't hierarchical. This is symbiotic. This is interconnected. I depend on you. To me, that's good theater. I depend on you. Don't show up not rehearsed. I depend on you. Do you know that story? And this sense of, from when we come together, we see how we have the kala lily, the blossoming of the masculine and feminine, and the realization that it's not about math, it's about life, it's about love. And these are the spines of my books in my library. Over the spines of the books of religion and tradition. And you see the chalice. And I don't have a picture of it today, but Eve, actually, where she's painted, she's a light. I love it. She's a lamp. Literally has a light coming out of her head. So I can take people on the tour and say, and you see Eve, the light of mind, the mother of generation, and all you have to do is put your hand over her head and light comes onto your hand. And I thought, how lovely, because her chalice then at the top of her head, and also the chalice of her womb, reveals that it's projected, you see, into time. And that the question of who are we then as human couldn't be asked in one tradition or religion or one culture, but it had to be asked, and think of the spines as time, across the ages. And as we were building the Grail, we finally come home, because this is my home, it's my domestic library. We put our hands on the Grail, and it reminds us, do you see, that we inherit the wisdom of all traditions when we return home. And because it's a library, nothing's lost. So you can take the book off the shelf and look at the Bible, look at the Quran, look at the Zohar, whatever your taste may be, put the book back in, and guess what? The spine becomes part of a much greater picture. I like that metaphor. Do you see how art is worth 1,000 words at that rate? Because it is inherently meaningful rather than I've got something I'm trying to conceptually convince you of. But I love this sense of the Akashic, returning home, and we are the living chalice, the outcome of this great question. Because we are a living library, no question is lost. And this is at the base, as you'll see, of this chalice, is the infant, actually two of them. And what it's showing us is that it's innocence that reaches, because we're umbilically connected to these worlds. And we're connected with who are we then? And as we reach, we don't reach with an agenda. We reach innocently. And as we do, we are born into our condition that allows us then, and this is the library itself, as we can see, the chalice is against the back wall, Sophia is below, coming up out of the floor, Eve is on the pillar in the foreground. I call this my painted cave. And what's so great about that? We left Lascaux, painted cave, like we leave the womb with the great question, who are we then? But to come back home, what I love is this is paint, storytelling, and imagination. It's no different than Lascaux. It's just saying the difference here is there's a library here. So what's the change in that metaphor? An empty cave, a cave with a library in domestic space. It's saying, you see, we left and ventured into the world, wondering who are we then? We come full circle to the painted cave, and it reminds us, you're the technology. You're the outcome of this question of being human. And the library reminds us it's not one story, it's not one book, but the story is so great it had to be told through all of these books. And every book, what we have to remember in a library, someone lived it. They didn't sit out conceptually and write about it, they lived the question. So we're literally standing in the inheritance of what it means to be human. And why a library, a painted library in my home is so important, why the painted cave, is I've held discussion groups in this room for 33 years, looking at Eastern tradition, Western tradition, alchemy, all theosophy. And I really feel that this is the garden that's grown because of all of our, because we don't know each other necessarily, but we do know each other energetically. Because we have been bringing what I feel are fields of generosity. Because when you gather to talk about ideas, when you gather to say, what do you think? And not to say, I think this about you. Not to judge, but to stimulate, to inspire. That becomes resident. And that's what we feel in sacred temples, we feel in homes. Some homes you want to stay in, and others you just want to run screaming out of. And that's why this place feels very sacred. You know, because it's this sense that we finally all find our way back to linoleum, ranch-style house, but inside of it is a cave painting with a library that says, so when you stand in the library, realize you are the living library. You're whole and holy. And now, because you're home, you can pull the books off the shelf and say, you know what? That worked really well. That was a really wise idea. I'm going to pull that. You start to compose identity, not based on getting somewhere, but by accumulating a sense that this works well. Let's attend to that. That's why gardeners, a lot of ancient techniques come back. You know, it's like, yeah, let's be the voice we see lacking, as I say. And Emerson, my dear, I've had him in discussion for many years and as well, and I always feel he's an old friend at this point. And he said, my old friend said, beauty is the creator of the universe. And I like that story. Beauty is the creator of the universe. A value you can't put your finger on, but you know it because it makes you feel love, a sense of possibility and wonder. And that's where I wanted to share the Phoenix Arise, why these mandalas are so important, because this painting of mine, which I finished in 1997, and I then created in card form for my book on the tarot. And there are so many remarkable mythic stories. My publisher called me and said, oh, Leigh, I got to tell you something. The invitations, literally 365 were sent out. And I said, like the solar year? And he goes, yeah. And I went, oh, because that relates to actually an old story about there was a great proclamation made in ancient times, as according to the Hermetica. 365 invitations were sent out. They were sent out to all the lands for those to gather from all the essentially the spokes of the wheel. Well, some, they ignored the invitation, others threw it away, some weren't interested. But those that attended were given mind. Those who did not attend were given reason. And that's the fundamental problem in this world. And when people say, it's about reason, you go, But look at what unreasonable thing will happen with these cards. I love it. I never thought I'd be a card man, but with the tarot, with this, I feel like, hey, pick a card, any card. I don't even particularly like games, so but I dropped the cards and they mirrored each other. And a most extraordinary thing happens as we see mirroring creation, and creation created a yoni, or a birth opening. But it also I started thinking about the shape of the yoni, and I thought, oh, what's brilliant in this is, what is the shape? Wherever we see the transposition of one quality or condition into another. Through the larynx, what is sound? It becomes sound. Air becomes sound. Through the eye, it becomes light. We are born from one condition to another, but we are not born incomplete. We are born whole and holy. We reach a critical mass where we carry creation, and we are born as creation. And why this also, then I flipped over the top of the card, and it revealed a holographic double helix DNA from a painting. Well, being an old cave painter, I started thinking about that as well, and I said, well, what's the language of creation? Creation. What are we born of? Creation. Spontaneous creation. We're not born of theory, we're not born of concept. So this is telling us that our holographic double helix DNA is an art form, and that we can only know our true weave when we understand that we are a work of art. And to understand this then, and I really feel like that's why also there's an alchemy here, because in alchemy there's fixity and volatility, meaning things that are in motion and things that need to be stable. And this is very important for the psyche as well, because everything's in motion. That's why people can't concentrate and they're really disconnected, is because it's all in motion. That's why this is very important technology, because it's fixed. It's not in motion. This will say what it is saying now in 10,000 years, whether the lights work or don't. That's important, because it's saying that our fundamental wiring is not a technology in time, it's actually a technology of all time. And therefore, you can see how this holographic weave, this double helix, revealed when I turned it to the side. I don't know if you can see it as well as you should, but there's an alien face. Do you see with the slit eyes, this slit mouth, and this here? If you look at this, has a slit mouth, the slit eyes. Do you see? So when it revealed an ancient alien face, I started thinking, other than, that's really cool. I started thinking that, how extraordinary that this is showing up, the ancestors, the so-called alien, is showing up in this DNA, in this weave. And I started to think we wear the robes of our ancientness. And the key here is saying that if we consider that possibly what we consider alien is simply like a tree looking down and not seeing anything but the ground. It doesn't understand that it's coming from depth. It thinks only where it is what's real. But this is actually putting us down into our root system and saying this is about communion, not communication. Meaning that once you understand your roots, then what you do is you introduce inspired ideas, questions, and you begin to allow a creative process to move through you, meaning you're finding it because it's not translating something you know, but it's being drawn up through your root system and finding expression through you. And like the library, therefore, your spine, your name, the contents of your vision will express this uniquely. But this is how we start to understand that everyone and every being is essential to the rediscovery of this deeper weave. And from the weave then, we'll go back to the painting, because I was showing the cards to an 11-year-old girl, a daughter of a friend of mine at the time. We were just playing with the cards. And after you discover the holographic DNA, believe me, you play with the cards. As a matter of fact, I feel that that's one of our lost keys. It's like, play more. You can't figure these things out, so dance it. But notice what happens. This will show us a remarkable story, again, about creation and about what the Aquarian realization is, and why we need to attend to the truth that we are art. Because notice as I start to turn the cards, it begins to geometrize, creating unique angles through holographic recapitulation. And Pythagoras, the great Greek philosopher, said God geometrizes. But in all of my reading, nobody's asked, what does God geometrize? Because Pythagoras was an ancient adept. He would have been horrified by our contemporary read of him. Because he'd say, well, creation, you ninny. comes from life. God geometrizes life. It's not math. When I said all is number, I meant archetype and entity. This is why we practice not math, mathesis, which is divine communion through the knowledge of the entity of number. It's a very different science altogether that we say, oh, it's just a pseudoscience. And I would say, no, what you're practicing is only a pseudo-art. And that's why we see all is number, archetype, being, and creation. And we see finally this emergence of an umbilical serpent, or the serpent, the Ouroboros, and it comes full circle. And this painting called Phoenix Arise shows us a nest and feathers. So it literally reveals, as in the story of the phoenix bird, and I'd love to say I'm this clever, but this is way beyond clever. This is like, this is like lightning striking me. I'm taking this serious. Oh, no, I'm not. Because it feels like I can't figure out how you would figure out how to figure this out. It's on that level for me. And I liken it to like your wife telling you she's pregnant. Suddenly the world becomes miraculous and you forget that really you can never know anything in itself. You have to take the journey. And just as in the story of the phoenix, once the nest is built, it erupts into flames. I pulled out the cards, and as we'll see, it erupted into flames. And I kept pulling out the cards, and it didn't reveal random flames, but actually it blossomed. So we're seeing in a fixed fractal mathematical form of creation, meaning a universal language, that is telling us we're going from a nesting or contracted stage of consciousness and perception into a blossoming or expanding stage of perception. And why this is so important is wherever the painting is opened, she gives birth to infinite mandalas, infinite suns, S-U-N-S's. And the agape mandala is 180 cards. I had it out to 360 cards. It would continue to grow larger and larger. So I'm hoping you're getting some of the visual philosophy that's in this inherently, rather than me just saying I'm applying this, because this was a guy told me his guide had an eagle spirit guide. And we were talking and opened up the mandala, and there was the eagle's nest. And I thought, that's a nice synchronicity. But Jung says we know from experience that the protective circle, the mandala, is the antidote for chaotic states of mind. The God image within us expresses itself as the mandala. And if you think about the mandala, it's how do we find a stable form that allows us to contemplate, and in contemplation energetically realign with this deeper pattern knowing. I'm convinced that this is actually going to be very therapeutic and helpful in helping people with memory problems, brain problems, because the brain doesn't respond to words as much as it does to pattern. It can restore itself through pattern recognition. And that's why I feel that this had to be a type of art form, because if we think about it, it's not, if you speak Chinese or you speak English, it doesn't really matter. It's not about the language, it's about the creative imagination being involved with this. And the Eye of Sophia mandala was one that at the heart, they all have suns. And the Hopi then say that the knowledge of the sacred DNA is in the weave of our baskets. My home is on Chumash ceremonial ground, and I feel a very strong relationship to this knowledge of the ancestors, because I do, as I say, I feel now like a cave painter. I feel that this is a painting. It is the technology. Our imagination is the tool and the energy that will allow it to animate itself within us. And that's why I feel everything in consciousness now is saying, listen, I'm giving you tools. You're not a child anymore. I'm not going to do it for you. We're over Mama, we're over Papa. Now it's up to us. That's why I'm glad that the Mayan calendar ended the way it did. I was sure it would. Because the Mayans weren't saying, you don't open an ephemeris and go, it's spring, boom. It was saying that basically, now you're not going to be looking for a future date. You're going to realize this is the date. And now it's up to us to create a story that cultivates that which we can live with and we want to share with one another. And that's why we see the Indian basket. They look like Indian baskets. They look like Indian headdresses. And Phoenix Arise and the blossoming of creation. And it told me this wonderful thing. It says, Phoenix Arise reveals we are an art form. We are not born into time. We are born into creation. We are each a phoenix, a unique blossom of creation, whole, holy, holographic. Each of us wears the robes of our sacred DNA. Life is our inheritance from the ancestors. Let us be worthy of them and this great, difficult, and noble adventure in consciousness, art, and meaning called being human. That's what I really feel, and why I feel so much. It's not about being a painter. It's about how do we approach the art of ourselves. Because what if we are this? Do you understand? And even just saying, what if I am this? Giving yourself the benefit of the doubt opens the possibility of it. And that's the healing element in the psyche. It says, give me material to work with. Don't wait for me to do it. I see the problems. So tell me, think in probabilities then. Tell me the probability, not of how you'd work it out structurally, but how you'd like to feel, how you would like this to take it. We start to use the tools we have. I really feel like that's the fundamental theater in this. We're the actors. This is our play. And we're the storytellers. So we have to attend and understand we're the tools of the performance itself. And that's why the last part, a few slides of Mothership, Revelations in pink, just because this is on the outside of my studio wall, and standing out, the eye is about 6 feet, so it's high. But this story of Mothership will bring us full circle, because she started to tell me a remarkable story that she said, to make sense of ourselves, we must begin to understand the cross of matter, mother. We must begin to understand that we are not born into time. We are born as the outcome of a process of ensheathing. The process of ensheathing we see within the mother's womb, because we pass from the reptilian to the mammalian to the hominid. And why this is so important, it says you don't grow out of a condition avoiding another condition, but you actually are the summum bonum of all those conditions. Therefore, as you turn toward the knowledge of the human, you will move into the worlds of thought. As you do, you will move away from the worlds of the animals, or the anima alls, meaning the soul beings that speak the language of love. So in your thought world, they will be pets until you realize that within yourself, if you don't try to speak to them with the language of thought, but actually begin to trust the inner rings of the language of love within you, you will experience communion, and these ancient beings can then mentor you. They don't simply need to be your pets, but they love you so much they're willing to do that too. That's generosity. And that's why we see the story of the Grail. This is in the upper part, this kachina up on top. And we'll see this story of the life principle of the chalice of the Grail, and the knowledge that we are born through the mother as both male and female. But her body will show us. As we can see, her hips will become the head of the hummingbird. Here we will see its beak, and then we start to see its wings on either side. And so the story is that we've been learning, like the hummingbird, to achieve stillness across the ages. And when this happens, we will finally open the vision that reveals her story, that says, you see, behind me is the ark of the ancestors, of the ancients. You come from great vision, and you came here to blossom. But notice here, she says, notice my crown is the tear. I think this is so important. She says, the reason you see the tear is that only through the mother, only through love, only through the ancestors, will you make sense of the sorrows of being human, also of the ecstasies of being human. And you must understand that for you to blossom, you've been on a very long journey of separation. And this is where we see these drops within the blossom. And she says, but the other thing, and it's very interesting because I feel her, she says, but you must understand the sadness is not just human. It's on all levels. Nobody thought it'd be this hard. That's like any building project. What about 14, 15, I don't know, how long? But this is why I love her question. She says, all is energy. There are no evil atoms. If you don't like the stories you're telling, tell better stories. Begin with the story you tell yourself about yourself. You're far more remarkable than you think you are. And that's the story of matter, mater, mother. She says, I love all of my children. Remember, you are woven of me. I am the weave of all worlds. All are born through me. All are sustained by me. Therefore, as the mother, I reject none of my children. Do you reject any of the atoms of your bodies? There are no evil atoms. See that? That sense of, and think of the body. I'm battling with my own inner universes. If I could just bludgeon that part of myself into submission, I might see that in the world. But we're doing it to ourselves. We have gotten professional at beating ourselves up. And that's why her story is Revelations in pink. Enough with the black and white one. It doesn't end well, nobody's happy, and even if you make it, you go, now what? Revelations in pink, it says, return home, lighten up a bit. It might be far more enjoyable than you think. And my first question to you, as mater, mother, she says, is when did your atoms become so generous to stick together to create one of you? When you perceive that level of generosity, you'll begin to remember who you truly are. I reject no one. I reject nothing. I love all things and give them the power to transform themselves. That's the gift. The rest is tyranny. And that's where she says, so mothership teaches us, and we see the two infants, male and female, both umbilically bound to this apple. The apple in this story is the gift of our unique artistry of human consciousness. And that we are the apple of Eve's eye, each of us, a unique blossoming of creation. Do you see? We're the outcome. We're holding the blossom now. And she says, finally, we will realize it's possible because of true relationship and surrendering finally to love rather than fear. Do you see? They're both on the journey together, which leads us to the lover and beloved, true relationship and worthiness. And here we see, again, this eternal union of male and female, and into the waters of time we still embrace, and the in becomes the out, the white, the black, the male, the female. And when we understand this, we have, as Jung would say, a deep understanding of the intrapsychic principles that compose us, and we don't take sides, we take journeys. And then the full circle of the grail, meaning that we finally understand that the Homo sapien, the journey of the ego, I think, therefore I am, is our structure and instrument. It allows these eyes to differentiate and quickly understand. Don't go there. But we can look at this as the wheel. Notice how it's holding the blossom. And the blossom is homo luminous, the soul that says, I love, therefore I am. And it's our purpose and delight. And I also look at this as the knowledge of the Father and the knowledge of the Mother. The knowledge of the Father is principles, laws, structures. What's the rules we all agree to? The knowledge of the Mother is, I love, therefore I am. So when we love, we remember we have a purpose in this world. And flowers are not tough. Flowers finally achieve beauty because they're willing to surrender to their own tenderness. They're not just battling through this upward thrusting motion toward another battle. And that's why I say we battled up, we followed the one, and for that period it was keep it all inside of you. But we've reached a season, and this was the end of the Mayan calendar, where it says that there's no further to go. And the energy, the difficulty within you, the pressure, is actually forcing us to finally say, I give in. We have to be about something. I will not devote my life to meaningless and pain. I will devote my pain, or even a sense of meaningless, to the quest to discover that this is about something remarkable, and it's as remarkable as we allow it to be. We are the cultivators of our own experience, and we bring forth that which we are willing to take responsibility for. And I thought if we could just end this with a little invocation I wrote. I thought we could say this together. It's rather lovely, rather appealing to the heart. So I'll start, and let's do it. To the ancestors and the ancients, to the family tree, to all who have gone before and are to come, to our sacred Gaia, our dear Mother Earth, and her generous heart, we send our love, our gratitude, our forgiveness of one another and of ourselves. We express here and now our willingness to be finally worthy of this great gift and responsibility of being the human form divine. Let us share from across the ages our most loving and creative stories of being human simply because we can. There's the power, and thank you very much.
Thank you.